When it comes to the fight against insurance companies, large corporations, and the healthcare industry, injured victims are always the underdog. But that doesn't worry us. At Messa & Associates, we're an injury law firm from Philadelphia, and we come to fight. Our clients know that they've got representation with a chip on its shoulder, and it's the same chip that makes Philly the toughest city in the country. Call 215-568-3500 or visit us online at messalaw.com. Messa & Associates, the toughest injury firm in Philadelphia.
Football 24/7 here on a Tuesday on the JAKIB Sports YouTube channel with NFL insider John McMullen. A long, long day today, John. How hot was it at Eagles minicamp day one?
It's about mid-80s. It felt like a training camp day, sunny. So the weather certainly was a positive from that perspective. You always like to have nice days, maybe a little bit too hot, if anything. You want to wait for July for that kind of heat, but not too many guys were complaining. They only went about 65 minutes. But yeah, there was definitely some sweating going on because South Philadelphia got pretty steamy in the afternoon.
Full attendance at day one of minicamp, John?
The only player missing, that's not hurt available was Landon Dickerson, the starting Pro Bowl left guard, obviously. And that was one of the more interesting stories, not from the perspective Landon, his absence was excused, so there's no issues there. He just had to take care of something. But what was interesting is the starter left guard with the first team ended up being Mekhi Becton, the 6'8" first-round pick of the New York Jets that the Eagles brought over. Jeff Stoutland yesterday said he's a fun player to coach. Obviously has significant talent, dealt with a ton of injuries with the Jets early in his career. But it's an indication. And Lane Johnson spoke today and said, basically, we got to get that guy on the field. That's how talented he is. So, you talk about Mekhi Becton, and the fact that they played him at left guard is an indication to me that they could play him at right guard. And, he's more comfortable on the left side. He's the left tackle naturally. So that factors into it as well. But when you think about Tyler Steen as a projected first-year starter at right guard, if he falters, the Eagles would like him to seize the job. But if he does, don't be surprised if down the road they take a look at Mekhi Becton at right guard.
Perhaps it has been a while since no Jason Kelce at the center position. Did Lane talk about that at all?
Yeah, I mean, of course, it was interesting, but the Eagles are very, very comfortable with Cam Jurgens. They drafted Cam Jurgens. Stout talked about that yesterday. It was funny. He said when Cam played right guard last season, he had more concerns because he didn't know if Cam Jurgens could play at right guard. And he ended up well enough to be a Pro Bowl alternate and persevered and played pretty well. At center, they have no question marks about Cam Jurgens being a top-tier center. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to step in and be a Hall of Fame level player, but the Eagles are very comfortable that they're going to get solid play at the center position. No question marks. From my personal standpoint, the only issue I worry about with Cam Jurgens is something, Jason Kelce was known for his durability, always there, hasn't missed a game in so long. Cam missed 5-6 games last year in his first year as a starter. So I'm a little bit concerned with the durability aspect, but I don't think anybody worries about Cam Jurgens' ability to handle that job.
In the second half of this edition of Football 24/7, we'll talk about the defensive side of the football. Let's stay on the offensive side of the football. For now, Johnny Mac, you had a chance to, I guess, take a good look at Jalen. Let's start there. How did Jalen Hurts look today?
Yeah, it was okay. It wasn't the offense as a whole this spring hasn't looked great in the transition from the Nick Sirianni offense to Kellen Moore and what he's trying to bring in. They're trying to mesh these two offenses. And generally, when you talk about the NFL as a whole, the defense is usually ahead of the offense or early in the process. So there's a lot of communication and a lot of new terminology, a lot of new sets, more motion, more bunch formations. You see all that. And I think guys are still feeling their way. It helped to get Devontae back. Devontae Smith was back. He had not been at voluntary work, at least with reporters there. So he was back. Lane was not at voluntary work, so he was back. And that when you have players like that, that's always going to help. Um, but there haven't been a ton of splash plays, and the splash plays in the spring have almost all come from the defense. Um, Another interception today. Reed Blankenship jumped a slant route and tipped the ball to Devin White, who managed to intercept it. So not a lot of splash plays from the offense. They tried a couple deep shots today, but Kelee Ringo was all over both of them. One was to Paris Campbell, one was to John Ross. Um, so still a work in progress offensively. They have so much talent, it's going to be fine, but it probably shouldn't be a surprise that they're having some growing pains early in the process.
Or should it be a surprise, John? You got a lot of talent on that side of the football. So no matter what the system, there's a lot of talent there.
Yeah, there is, and that eventually it'll take over. And even if they have to scale back and maybe lessen some things and go back to what they do well foundationally, they'll do it. And I think the players will start to show up. But right now they're kind of, again, even when it comes down to learning the new terminology and learning the different things that are being asked of them, um, it hasn't been seamless, but no one should expect it to be seamless. And that's why chemistry is a big part of it. And, um, this is the first day Devontae was out there with AJ, as I said, at least from our perspective, the reporter's perspective. Um, and as they get out there together, it'll start to mesh. And, it's easier to play against Joseph Nada and Paris Campbell than AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. So, some of the splashy plays from the defense. Bobby King, the linebackers coach, said, "Hey, they're in pajamas now." So, the pads aren't on, a lot of things. Saquon Barkley, I talk about it all the time on Birds 365. He hasn't shown up. Well, there's no pads on. So basically all he can do is do something in the passing game. It's a glorified passing camp. And right now they're using him as a decoy, and that'll change as they get closer and try to accomplish what they want to accomplish.
Should there be already, Johnny Mac, a rhythm with Jalen and Devontae and Jalen and AJ Brown and again, just the mere number of repetitions that they have had going back into just last year? Should they be a little bit more? Should it be a little bit better than how you're describing it, or perhaps no?
I can't force people not to worry, but we're not going to be talking about any of this in July, never mind September. Early in the process, again, 7-on-7s, passing camp, a little bit of teamwork, 11-on-11s, but there's no real pass rush, no real pass protection from that standpoint. So, new offense, new offensive coordinator, new quarterbacks coach, trying to bring in new ideas. new motions, new bunch sets. Um, I often compare it to spring training in baseball. Remember at practice, you're not trying necessarily to beat the defense. A lot of times, Doug Peterson would run those 10-10-10 practices, and not nobody, some of us knew what they were, but most people didn't. And it was, 10 minutes where the defense is servicing the offense and you're just trying to give them looks so the offense can get sharp. 10 minutes for vice versa and so on. And then 10 minutes for special teams. So a lot of times I bring up those practices that Andy does as well, Andy Reid. You're trying to sharpen what you want to do for the games. And this early in the process, you're trying, spring training. Like a pitcher might be working on a new pitch, and he might look like crap in spring training. And you might say, as a fan, you might be sitting in the stands going, what's wrong with so-and-so? Well, he's not trying to get the other players out. He's trying to get comfortable with this new pitch so he can bring it up north when the games count. And if he can't, maybe he'll scrap it and go back to his, as I said, foundational stuff. So that's what the Eagles are doing now, and trying to feel the process out. But when you get down to the real games and you have Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley, Dallas Goedert, good offensive line, they're going to be fine offensively, but they haven't looked behind. So all we can do is tell you what we see and what we watch, and there hasn't been a lot of highlights for the offense early in the spring.
You'll watch 2 more times, I guess, this week, and then that's it until camp officially opens, I guess, towards the end of July. So 2 more days for whatever the offense is at this point to either experiment or get some rhythm. It makes me nervous, by the way, Johnny Mac.
Well, I don't think it should make you too nervous. It's June 4th. They're not playing on Sunday. They're not playing for a while. They're going to look different as you get through even training camp in late July, as you mentioned, to the preseason games. And the ultimate goal is to be ready for the Green Bay Packers in Brazil on September 6th. But and September 6th, you're not going to be thinking about Joseph Nada playing with the first team and OTAs. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. It's it's important for the younger players. It's probably not that important for the veteran players. And it's an educational. We got to talk to a bunch of assistants, the new assistants. We got to talk to Christian Parker, the defensive backs coach, Clint Hurts, the defensive line coach, Doug Nussmeier, the quarterbacks coach, Bobby King, the linebackers coach. So, and almost all of them said, understand this is an education period. And Jim Schwartz used to say, the off season is for teaching, and a little bit early in camp, you're still in that teaching mode, and then you get to evaluation, where you're trying to evaluate your team to get to the best 53. And then it's the regular season start. It's just about preparation, always preparation for the next opponent. So it goes teaching, evaluation, preparation, and the Eagles are in the teaching phase right now.
What do you see, John, or what do you hear? Is Nick Sirianni still the lead voice? Is it still the Nick Sirianni offense that they're working through?
No, it's Kendall Moore's offense and Kellen Moore. I'm sorry, I was reading something else. Kellen Moore's offense. And that's part of the problem. I do think you're trying to, probably straddle a fence here. The Eagles don't want to scrap everything. that they did successfully with Jalen Hurts and company under the Nick Sirianni offense. So they're trying to sort of mesh the two together, which I'm not in love with that thought process, and that goes really up the ladder to Jeffrey Lurie. Um, you know, it's, to me, it's one or the other. And I think you should say, to, if you want Kellen Moore to be the offensive coordinator and be the play caller and it be his offense, in theory, if you hired the right guy, if you think you hired the right guy, he will evolve to the point where he will utilize Jalen Hurts correctly, and everybody else for that matter. So I don't like the thought process. To me, it's a little bit backward to say, oh, it's, your offense, but you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do this because we're successful at it before. I don't like that. Now, I'm not saying that's the way it's going down, but that's sort of the way the Eagles hinted it would be going down, the meshing of the two offenses. And I don't like that. I don't think that's the proper way to build an NFL offense.
Well, is Nick Sirianni still the CEO of the football team?
Yeah, he's definitely in charge of the football team. I mean, out there today was yelling during special teams. He's very vocal. If something is going on that he doesn't like, he certainly is not shy to stop it and make sure it's corrected. But yeah, it's a little bit different from the perspective of he's given up autonomy of the offense to Kellen Moore, and he's more of a traditional CEO coach versus, essentially what he would do before is build the game plan during the week, and the play caller, whether it was Shane Steichen or Brian Johnson, would have to pick plays off what he built from the game plan. Now it's going to be Kellen Moore's game plan. So that's really the difference. But as far as being in charge of the whole football team, yeah, I mean, if Nick wants something done, it's got to get done.
Let's get to the defensive side of the football here on Football 24/7 for a more in-depth analysis of day one. Right back here tomorrow morning on Birds 365 with Xander Kraus and John McMullen. They'll start at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Mark Farzetta will start at 6 a.m., 6 a.m. to 7 a.m., and then right into Birds 365 starting at 8 o'clock. Defensive side of the football, James Bradberry was back. There was a lot of talk that James Bradberry wasn't going to be here. Well, he was here. He was there today.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it was a matter of where the Eagles going to make the decision to cut or trade James Bradberry. Then he was not going to show up. He's too professional for that, and obviously, he did show up. What was interesting is before the practice started, Nick threw a little bit of a curveball at us and said the Eagles are going to try him at safety because they have so many young corners. And it was, we're all looking forward to see James Bradberry try to play safety. Nick Sirianni had brought up Charles Woodson, a Hall of Fame player who started as a cornerback, eventually moved to a slot player as he got older, and finally safety. And that was some high praise. But, James was out there during individual work and he got hurt immediately, went to the injury tent, fell down, tweaked something. And he came out of the tent and watched practice. So it's not terribly serious, but he didn't partake in any team drills. So we never got to see him play safety. Probably not 100% because the Eagles don't have to release injury information in the off season by league rule, but you're probably not going to see James the rest of the spring. And, when it comes to pushing it back into training camp, I still think it's far more likely than not that James Bradberry's not going to be here on the Eagles. But it's pretty evident that Howie Roseman wants to get something for him, and he's going to hold out to get something for him.
Kelee Ringo, John, Ringo rules was in your headlines after day one.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about just a great practice performance. I can't say enough about Kelee Ringo. You look at everybody. Anybody who was at that practice knew Kelee Ringo was the best player on the field. He was really, really good, and he got the first team reps opposite Darius Slay. Isaiah Rodgers had been getting that in the voluntary work, but I always say you have to pay attention who's there and who isn't there. On the first practice, Kelee wasn't there, the voluntary. In the second practice, Slay wasn't there. So Ringo was back, and he started at left corner. So my point is, if Kelee was there for every practice and Slay was there for every practice, they would have been the starting corners. And that's what happened at mandatory minicamp. And Ringo was just great. They tried 2 deep shots, as I said. And understand, John Ross had the record, the combine record for many years until it was broke this year by Xavier Worthy, ran a 4.22. Paris Campbell ran in the 4.3s. So these are really fast guys. And Kelee Ringo was running step for step with them, not panicking, showing patience, turning, deflecting the football away easily. And even A.J. Brown, who was a great receiver to say the least, he got Ringo on one comeback routes. And AJ is so big and physical, he caught the football. But even on that one, Ringo was right there in his hip. And a lot of people that listen to Birds 365 know I'm really high on Kelee Ringo. And the biggest reason why, truth be told, is because AJ told me he's going to be really good. And AJ knows good cornerbacks. And it's interesting because Kaylee's younger. He came in so young from Georgia. He's younger than Quinyon Mitchell, their first round pick this year. So he's got a big upside, and he really, really showed up today.
Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, get a chance did they make any sort of impact today?
Nothing splashy, but Vic unveiled sort of an interesting tweak in the fact that he used them both. Not really interesting from Cooper's standpoint. I expected to see Cooper DeJean play a little bit of big nickel, which is, essentially he's playing the second linebacker position. And a lot of teams in the modern NFL do that. They put defensive backs, and they really have only one linebacker on the field to get better in pass coverage. They did that with Quinyon Mitchell. So at one point, they had Slay, Ringo, Avonte Maddox, and Quinyon Mitchell all on the field at the same time, which, in theory, you should be able to cover people with that look. Somebody smart, they might try to run the football, but doesn't seem like the NFL's going that way. So just an interesting tweak that, and you'll see that from Vic Fangio. He's obviously he's been doing this for a long time, and he's got the cachet to try some things that maybe other people can't try, to say the least.
Well, there's no question on the defensive side of the football who's making the decisions on the defensive side of the football.
No, yeah. He's the head coach of the defense, as he should be.
Nakobe Dean signing today, John, at all?
Yeah, Nakobe's back. He was back for the first time last Thursday, I guess it was. So last week was his first practice back in team drills. He had been working individually, coming back from Liz Frank surgery. And he's sort of mixing in with the ones. Right now, Devin White and Zach Bond have gotten most of the reps with the first team, but Nakobe's starting to mix back in, and I expect him when he's healthy and fully 100%. I expect him to be the starting middle linebacker. And then Devin White will kick over to the weak side spot and try to hold off Zach Bond. That looks to be the way it's going. But he is back, and he's got to stay healthy.
Let's use our last couple of minutes here on Football 24/7 with NFL insider John McMullen to get your 5 bullet point takeaways, John, from today. Let's put them into sort of a short synopsis. And then again, you'll be right back here tomorrow on Birds 365. Then, of course, you'll be down at NovaCare again tomorrow for what will be day 2. But give me those 5 bullet points, your 5 takeaways from today, and then you'll rehash all of that with Xander tomorrow morning on Birds 365.
Well, I think, the interesting parts I kind of mentioned, Landon Dickerson was an excused absence, and the fact that they moved Mekhi Becton over to left guard was certainly interesting. I didn't expect that, and to see him in that size. And it gets you to start thinking about what potentially could happen at right guard if Tyler Steen falters. I go back to the 2017 Super Bowl season. The Eagles wanted Isaac Seumalo, who was a very young player at the time, to take the left guard job. And he wasn't ready. And they tried Chance Warmack, and then they ultimately landed on Stefan Wisniewski. So the Eagles have some veteran pieces that if Tyler Steen falters, that maybe they can insert pretty quickly. I mentioned Ringo, just a tremendous practice, and really looks sharp, really looks good. They got pajamas on, though, as Bobby King said. So, one of the things when the pads go on, who is going to be the better run support player? And Ringo, by the way, at the end of last season showed that he was at least capable of helping out in that aspect of the game, which has been sort of a weakness for Isaiah Rodgers when he was in Indianapolis. So that should help Ringo as well. The offense, as I mentioned, continues to learn a new offense. I think they're behind the defense, which is probably surprising because the offense is, for most people, because the offense is supposed to be the one with all the talent. But, that's usually not unique to Philadelphia. Usually the defense is ahead of offenses in most NFL cities, early in the process. So that shouldn't be a surprise to most people. But it would be nice to see a splash play. And they tried it, as I said, with deep balls, but they haven't been able to connect on those types of things just yet. And the offense as a whole, just from the schematic standpoint, it's pretty evident you're going to see way more motion this year. You're going to see way more bunch formations from the receivers to try to get them a little bit of open space. Devontae Smith talked about that today, and I think they're excited about that part of it, and getting more of that into the offense. And, they got to figure it out with the quarterback, obviously. That's the most important position in sports, and the goal should be to maximize Jalen Hurts. I talk about it with Xander all the time in the morning. I don't know. They seem to be trying to get the football out of his hands really quickly, and I'm not sure I'm a fan of turning him into a point guard. And I hope that's not the way the Eagles are going, but we have to see how it unfolds.
Good topic for tomorrow's continued conversation on Birds 365 with Xander and Johnny Mack. Thanks for watching Football 24/7 with NFL insider John McMullen, who does a great job of covering this team, and a long day today and right back at it tomorrow. Don't forget, as Xander often says, to hit the like button on your way out. Certainly continue to subscribe to the JAKIB Sports YouTube channel, and we'll see everybody tomorrow morning on Birds 365 with Xander and Johnny Mac. Johnny Mac, great stuff, brother.
Thanks, buddy.
All right, man. See you next time, everybody.
When it comes to the fight against insurance companies, large corporations, and the healthcare industry, injured victims are always the underdog. But that doesn't worry us. At Messon Associates, we're an injury law firm from Philadelphia, and we come to fight. Our clients know that they've got representation with a chip on its shoulder, and it's the same chip that makes Philly the toughest city in the country. Call 215-568-3500 or visit us online at messalaw.com. Messon Associates, the toughest injury firm in Philadelphia.
EAGLES, Eagles.